those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to this review episode of the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to pinnacle entertainment savage worlds aimed at beginners and veterans alike. My name is Eric Lamoureux, aka No Sleeves McGee, and with me today is my good friend Harrison Hunt. How's it going?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so good. I mean, no, actually, I'm very depressed. Last episode of The Wild Eye, I took a real beating because you guys said that I'm negative. I never like anything. You know, I've got no room for positivity in my life. So I just want to say, this morning, I decided I'm going to watch a new program on TV. There's works going on above me. So if you hear any noise during this podcast, listeners, I apologise. But yeah, I watched a new program this morning. I watched The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Oh boy.
I have to say, it was quite good. So there we go. That is my positivity corner.
Isn't that a show for teenagers?
It is, yeah. It is. But I watched the original when I was a kid, and I was into that when I was a child. So I thought I'll watch this remake. I have to say, I'll give it half a thumb up.
Is that like Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Yeah, it's a remake of that, yeah.
Oh, God.
So
and you like that better than Gotham? That's terrible.
I think that says more about Gotham than it does about Sabrina the Teenage Witch. But what are we reviewing today, Eric?
That's right. Well, let's get on with the topic. So today Harrison's going to review actually one of the first Savage World settings that was given a fresh paint of coat a couple years ago, and that would be LowLife.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I'm excited about this one. This is one I've been wanting to get my hands on for a long time, but I couldn't get this in England, not with ease anyway, not without spending a pretty penny. So when I was out in Con on the Cob meeting these guys in the flesh, Con on the Cob is obviously organised by Andy Hopp, who's the creator of LowLife, and these books were readily available, along with all the accessories, all of the stuff available, the supporting materials. So yeah, I picked up LowLife along with all the supporting materials, and I'm excited, Eric. Stiff as a board down there.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, you really went all out and bought a bunch of stuff for it, and yeah, part of it was for you to review it too. So I'm glad you finally got your copy of it. A beautiful book. So, well, let's get on with it and get between the covers. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Welcome one and all to Between the Covers, the hottest and most greased up segment on this podcast. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, things are gonna get a bit weird in here.
No, it's nothing sexy.
Sorry, what?
It's kind of where we talk about a Savage Worlds book from cover to cover.
Like some sort of book club.
Well, essentially, yes.
Well, in that case, I'm leaving. Oh yeah. See you later. So this is a kind of a post-apocalyptic setting, right? And basically the way Andy Hopp puts it is every imaginable kind of post-apocalyptic event that could happen to our Earth has happened. That's the way he puts it. But the way it's kind of put in the book is that nobody really knows what happened to the Earth. But it doesn't really matter. All that matters is this. In this book, you play as what the surviving races, and the surviving races are the things that have been rumored to have survived after, like, a nuclear apocalypse. So, you know, things such as Twinkies, mutated humans, cockroaches, things like this. But we'll get into what you play later. And this
What
book,
about Big Mac?
don't be silly, Eric. This is not a comedy setting. No, it is. It actually kind of is.
No, it's very serious.
No, it's not at all. But the cool thing about this is that this book is written from the perspective of a gadabout, right? And a gadabout is somebody that, in this setting, roams Mother Oith, which is what the world is called in this. So it's like Mother Earth, but it's called Mother Oith. And it's written by a gadabout. It's somebody that roams that land and sort of documents stuff, takes in the surroundings, and tells other people about it. And this gadabout is called Tukandor Flaminguez. So it's actually, the book is written by Andy Hopp, but it's written by a character from that universe called Tukandor Flaminguez. And you're going to notice throughout this review that a lot of the characters in this have bloody weird names. And that does make it kind of hard to keep track of. But what that means is that the writing in this is often bloody hilarious. Now, when I review this is going to be filtered through me, so it's not going to be funny at all. However, all of the book is written by that character, and as a result, like, it's kind of funny. So when it goes through the history of the whole world, instead of giving you like specific dates and stuff like this, the way it says the history is like, it'll say a really, really long time ago, and then the next date it gives is way back in the day, and then it says back in the day, and then the time of the flush. Now the flush is the event that caused our Earth as we know it to be kind of destroyed, as it were, and turned into this new thing, and caused all of these new races to become the dominant races in the world, kind of thing. And the reason it's called LowLife is because all of these races are kind of, I don't want to say scummy, but they're weird, strange things, strange creatures, that the only things that could survive such a hideous apocalyptic event. And these things, they don't really understand the world in the way that we do. They don't even talk the same. They don't perceive time in the same way that we do. They don't even perceive distance or measurements in the same way that we do. And this actually has certain gameplay benefits, which is absolutely awesome. So they even call the Earth a different thing. They call it Mother Oith and believe that it's a kind of living thing, which is actually really, really cool. And the first thing I'll get into is the kind of races that are available on Mother Oith. There's loads. So what I do is I'll just pick out a couple. So one of the first ones, like if you want to play like a bog standard human, you can't really, because the first race is called a Bodil. I don't actually know what that really means, but the point is that these are mutated humans. Although the way the book puts it is that they're so mutated and weird that they wouldn't be recognized as humans. And even the people on this planet, they don't call them the forebearers of this world humans. They call them human racians. And the Bodils, they look like human racians, except they could have like 4 hands for a face. They could have a chin where their head is supposed to be. They could have legs coming out their head. They're so unrecognizable. They're barely like human racians at all. They're just completely different. And as a result, they're the closest thing to a human racian, but they barely resemble them at all. Then you got Kremphilians. These are one of the things that whenever people mention LowLife, they tend to mention these as, oh, it's so awesome, you can play these. So these are things, they're like Twinkies, basically, because there's that old saying that a Twinkie could withstand a nuclear apocalypse, and as a result, you can play a Twinkie with arms and legs. And they're awesome. So they look like, it could be any cake-based product, but essentially how they're pictured in the book, they always look like Twinkies. You've got cockroaches called croaches. But again, they don't have to be cockroaches. It's any bug-like creature with a hard carapace, basically. Another notable couple, I mean, they're all really cool, so it's hard not to mention them all, but there's one called a hawk as well, which is, the reason they're called that is because hawk is the sort of sound you make when you're hacking up a loogie, and these things look like giant boogers. And they're aggressive, they're kind of like tribal type people, they're angry, and they're awesome. They look like giant boogers. And then, just to give you a couple more, there's one called an UFO, which is essentially like a UFO. And people call it UFO because they don't really know how to pronounce it like we do. So, yeah. And then the last one I'll get into, which is kind of important to know, is a smelf. Now, these things are kind of like, they're weird creatures with giant noses. And the reason I mention them is because when we get into the arcane background, they're able to use one of the arcane backgrounds that are kind of important. So those are just a handful, and in some of the other books.
Well, what's the one like a pile of garbage where you can hide your weapons in your folds and stuff?
Those are literally called. They're called a pile.
A pile, yeah. Okay.
And it is literally just
those.
Yeah, they're just a pile of garbage. So you could just literally play a pile of garbage. There's so many as well, because the cool thing is in the other books, the sort of supplement books, they've given you even more races. Like there's one you can play a big thing of corn, you can play a marshmallow called a marshmallow, you can play a mushroom. There's so many other races, but wow. I think they really spoil you with this. The good thing is that you could just take the main book, have those as the playable races, and then have the other ones as NPCs. You don't have to use all of them, but it's crazy how many there are. So this is the kind of thing that you're dealing with here, and in this world, they have religions as well, and religion plays a big kind of part in this universe, to the point where they released a whole book all about religions called Holy Crap, which we'll get into a little bit later. However, in this book, they have 5 main religions. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main religions, and then a couple of others that are detailed, kind of like in a very small way. So there's Borglazarianism, where they worship a dung beetle. There's humanitarianism, where these guys, they kind of worship old human racianism like technology, and they search for it. It could be anything from like they search for a jar of peanut butter and then worship it because it's an ancient artifact and things like this. There's Jeezel Freakism. Now Jeezel Freakism is my favourite because these guys, they actually so they think that there's an old like a human race god, right? They've uncovered artifacts belonging to the human race, and they believe that this guy was the human race god, and it's Elvis basically, except they think he was called Jelvis.
Yeah,
exactly.
Jelvis.
Too cool, man. Anyway, there's another one called Jemima's Witnessism, and this one is they're essentially anti-human race people with Jeezel Freakism or humanitarianism. They're like, screw those guys, we hate them. That's putting it very simply, but it's kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. And the last one, the last notable one, is Stanismism, which is a mouthful. But these guys are essentially your Satanists. They like goth makeup, they like satanic rituals, blood rituals, this kind of thing. And yeah, they're your Satanists. So those are your basic main religions. There's a couple of others detailed in there, but they just do it briefly, and they're left for the GM or the players to sort of flesh out how they want.
The Jemima witnesses, do they worship a bottle of syrup, like on Jemima?
Yeah, their symbol is a cracked or inverted syrup bottle, and it says their virtues: destroying effigies and relics of the human race, the hostess of hate and other fiends. The kind of thing is that a lot of the creme-filians, so the Twinkies in that, these will be Jemima's witnessisms, because when the Twinkies were kind of packaged up before the flush kind of thing, and as a result they didn't understand why the human race kind of packaged them up and left them in what they call plastic coffins, and that's kind of why they hate the human race. That's why creme-filians tend to be Jemima's witnesses. Yeah,
that's crazy.
I think.
All right, so we got the races, we got the religion. Now maybe the arcane backgrounds.
Yeah, man. There's a lot here, so I'll just give you a couple of what I think are the sort of cooler ones, because you got your standard one, which is basically called the Hocus Pocus. That's basically as standard as you can get, but there is the Danged Wrangler. Now these are your necromancers. So danged as in dead, right? So these, and then you wrangle them. So these are like necromancers, right? You got those. Then you got Dementalists. So Dementalists, essentially the UFOs, so the alien guys. Those will use Dementalism, and it's like psionics, right? Those are the guys that mainly use it. In the book, it says it's not unheard of for other people to be able to use Dementalism, but mainly UFOs can use this, and they'll essentially attack people's minds and get them to do stuff. So if you take any of the powers listed in the book, it has to have kind of a psionic trapping. You've got holy rollers. So those are your priests, essentially. So they are often also Diesel freaks. So you could have a holy roller who prays to Jelvis and uses all priest type trappings and prays to Jelvis to get his priesthood, which is amazing.
Wow.
Smellcasters is one of my favorites, and they essentially put gases into kind of bottles and then chuck them at enemies. So every time you want to prepare a spell, you get rid of that amount of power points, put it in a bottle, chuck it, and then once it's used, then you can gain the power points back. And then the last one I wanted to go to tell you guys about was Weirdo. So I'm going to flip to the page here because it's kind of hard to talk about because it's weird how it works. Essentially, the Weirdos thing, it's like your weird scientist, right? But instead of using the spell and then having it as that kind of trapping, you have to make the device ahead of time, kind of like a weird scientist normally. But the only difference is that when you make the device, you imbue that device with a number of power points equal to the amount of power points that spell would have had. So essentially, let's say for example, give me an example of a power. So a bolt takes 3 power points to cast. So
yeah, 1 to 3 depending.
Yeah. So let's say for example you go for a 3 power point bolt, right? Then you can make a device that has 3 power points, and then you have that device, and anyone can use it. But the requisite skill that you use to cast it, this is kind of hard to describe. So let's say for example your skill was what it would have been Weirdo, right? So then that would have been a D10. So anybody else has to then roll a D10 to try and use the device. And then, but the thing is that it doesn't just work in a standard way. You can describe any trapping for the way it works, as long as it fits within the spell. If this isn't making much sense, that's because it's bloody hard to describe. But let me give you an example from the book. So there's somebody that's made a device for telekinesis, right? And the thing that he's made is the Blooming Bloomers. And it says, these underpants automatically inflate if their wearer falls a distance greater than his own height, slowing his descent enough to allow him to land unharmed. And that's basically it. So to activate it, you roll it has a D10 die, and you have to roll above a 4. It has 5 power points, and the range is worn. So you just have to put trousers on, roll a D10, and then if you're falling, then you just inflate them. That's how it works. So that's kind of, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like it's a little bit crunchy, but if you want to play a Weirdo, it takes kind of a little bit of planning ahead. So that's the only one that's a little bit more crunchy than the others. Aside from, there's one new one in this called the Giggity Gigger. So the way that these guys work is that essentially you have to kind of you don't really start off with. It's kind of an arcane background. Again, this is another hard one to describe because you look at the power list, right, and it's got like 3 powers in there. You don't really do anything with this guy, except that what you can do is you can capture these weird things called giggities, and then you gig them. And then once you've gigged the giggity, then you can get traits from it. Now, this can be anything from a new edge to a new spell to a new ability score to a new skill to it can be anything. You could even just grow tentacles out of your head, and these can be permanent, these can be like temporary, or it can just be for a few minutes. It can be anything, and there's a massive list of things. So every time you capture one, and I guess it's up to the GM how rare or how often this happens, but every time you capture one, you have to roll in these tables, and it can be like roll in this table, then this table, then this table. But it can take long, it can take a short amount of time. It depends on which giggity you capture. And it's kind of crazy, but that's the giggity gigger. So it's kind of an arcane background because you can get powers from it, I guess. Because and also you do have a choice between 3 powers when you start. And they're all new, but you don't really get like spells out the gate. You can't really harm people with it. You have to capture these things to get stuff. And the traits are, it could be anything. It can be stuff that affects your character to things that just affect your character cosmetically. It's not necessarily all game affecting stuff, but it can just be like, oh, suddenly now you have to roll into town and you've got 5 noses on your face, or now you're actually stronger, or whatever. And sometimes they can be permanent.
So you basically have to summon those giggities, or
you have to actually hunt them down. So it's kind of weird like that. So you tend to go around with a big net, and they're like these little triangular flying beasts.
Oh, so it reminds me a little bit of SpongeBob, like when they're trying to capture stuff in nets. I don't know. I don't watch it.
Oh, like those
cartoon much, but
jellyfish fishing. Yeah, it is actually a little bit like that, I guess. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the main sort of ones. I mean, there's a couple more, but I say they're not worth mentioning. They are awesome, but there's 8 arcane backgrounds in this. 8. Count them, listeners.
Yeah. All right, here's a question for you, and hopefully my audio is coming okay now.
Yeah.
So. All right, 8 arcane backgrounds, and I would imagine just like any other Savage Worlds book, you have a list of archetypes. Are there any interesting character archetypes that you can play in this game, or if you want the really cool stuff, you have to pick one with an arcane background?
No, I mean, the cool thing is that there are a lot of actually really cool archetypes in this, because the world itself, right, is really bloody weird. And the actual archetypes that you can pick are great. They're really great. So the ones that it gives as an example, and I imagine like whenever I play this with my group, they're going to get really inspired by these, but you've got artiste, so you could play an artist, right? There's beast puncher. This is like your beast tamer type of thing. There's booty hunter, so you're treasure hunter, and I know what you're thinking at the moment. You're thinking, oh, these aren't very good at all. But then you got gangster, you got pimp, you got hoink. So these are like kind of, the hoinks are like policemen kind of thing. Then you got lashmaster, so you could be a slave trader, right? And you've got price of corns, so these are like pirates. And then you've got smoothster, so these are like your face characters. There's snoots, so these are the kind of like noblemen. You could be a slave, or you could be a pedon. So these are like the lowest of the low in society. But this is actually handy because nobody notices you, because you're basically just like sewer trash. There's loads of cool ones in here, and the fact that you can play a pimp, and there's I believe, if I'm not mistaken, an edge where you get bonuses for slapping women.
Wow, they got away with that.
I seem to remember reading that somewhere. If I'm mistaken, I apologize, but I think that was in there somewhere.
No, I think you're right. It's just funny that, recently I think it was the episode on Solomon Kane and Rippers, the showdown, where everybody was like outraged at the slavery in there. And now we're talking about a game where you can play a slave master or a slave, and you can be good at slapping women, and nobody's offended. I think that's great.
I think it's wicked because the way he gets away with it is because it's a comedy setting, and it's got a lot of seriousness and a hell of a lot of depth, but I think that you can get away with it because everything has weird names. Like, I know it's just straight up calls it a pimp, but like sort of the way it kind of describes it doesn't seem offensive. Like, I'll read a bit of it to you because it's crazy. Let me bloody find it. Pimps are Mac mummies and daddies. They pander their stables of strumples to the lonely, the desperate and the libidinous. A good pimp is half lashmaster, half weremonger, half smoothster and half ham, with an attitude big enough to accommodate 4 halves. Pimping is a respected profession in many parts of the world. Elsewhere, it's illegal, or at least heavily frowned upon. I just think it's like cool the way he's written it. line in this book is sort of well thought about. But yeah, it's just cool, man. And one of the things I mentioned earlier that I wanted to get into quickly was the way that time and distance is measured in this game. So the thing is that time is kind of is the same. They measure everything in seconds and months and things like this, but it kind of came about differently. So they do measure everything in seconds and stuff like that, but one thing that happened was that it was just pure coincidence. So a second, it says in the book, is the amount of time it took Goose Wolf the Geese, personal janitor to Kiesermeister Tincture the Fourth, to say his name with a mouthful of pickled scruffy mumblers. There are 60 of them in a minute. A minute is how long it took Goose Wolf to stop choking after trying to say his name with a mouthful of pickled scruffy nubblers. 60 of these make an hour, and so on and so on. But then there's this whole story, right? So distance in this isn't measured in inches like it is in a normal Savage Worlds game. It's measured in yorts. And there's this whole story in the book, and it's really, really entertaining. Obviously, I can't read the whole thing out, but it's really entertaining about how all these people fought about, fought with each other about what the standard measurement should be in this universe. And it's hilarious, and they ended up settling on the yort, and the yort is both a measure of weight and size as well as distance. And there's a really funny thing in the Keister Island book, which is the first supplement, and on the map, you usually have like a key on a map saying how much distance on the map is equal to a mile. In that map, right, it just says 1 yort equals 1 yort. And the whole book is just full of like really weird things like this. And like even the months of the year, to accommodate the extra days that usually go into a year, because some months are shorter than others, it's called 1uary, 2uary, and then they've got things called else time. So these are the holidays that are throughout the year. So it's 1uary, 2uary, the first else time, which is Flopsmas Flume, the Feast of the Greased Beast, which is like a holiday for Borglazarians, which is the people that worship the big, what is it called, dung beetle. And so it's got all of that in there. Even the days of the weeks have different names. So Sunday is called Spoon Day, then it's Moon Day, Tubes Day, Wednesday, as in like when, Borg's Day, Friday, and Splatter Day. Nice. It's bloody weird, man. It's going to take some getting used to when you run it to to say all this stuff. But so North,
probably need some cheat sheets and that kind of stuff to give to the players so they know what you're talking about.
Totally, and I'd also keep this on the back of my GM screen as well. And even North, West, South, and East, they don't. They're not measured normally as well. So you have two cardinal directions. There's a place at the back of Mother Earth, right? That it doesn't really go into what it is necessarily. There are loads of theories about what it is, but there's a big crater, right? And it's called the hole of Mother Earth. Now people think that it's like the butthole of the Earth, right? But it looks like a crater. It could be where a nuke hit. Loads of people have loads of different theories about it. And so when you want to say you want to go somewhere, like you don't say north or south, you either say you're going whole whence, which is away from it, or whole wood, which is towards it. And then if you want to go any other direction, you just say go towards this thing. So you might say, oh, I'm going towards this. I can't remember the name of any place at the moment. So the point is you might go to say I'm going towards this place, or go away from that place twice, or whatever. And then that's how you do any other directions. And the thing is, as I mentioned earlier, what I really like about this is that it kind of does away with getting into complicated directions and things like this. And as a result, you can just abstract a lot of that out. You just say, a guy will just say to you, oh yeah, go whole whence and then go towards, it's like there's this thing called the really gigantic beast or something like that. And he'll say, go towards that for 20 yorts. And it's like, well, what does that mean? You don't really know, but in game terms, what it means is, oh, your characters now have the direction. So, yeah, roll and see if you get there.
Yeah, it removes the need for looking at a map and all that. You can just move on with the story and get them to where they need to go without worrying about the details, really.
Exactly. That's what I like about it a lot. It's really, really, really cool. And Yeah, there is no micromanaging like that. I mean, there's little bits in here, but it's really cool, and that's what I really like about it. And a lot of the bits in the world are extremely clever. In fact, one of the coolest things I liked about this was reading all about the different places and stuff like that, because they've got like these extremely clever places. So like a lot of people kind of believe like certain things about certain places. A lot of races believe other things about certain places. Like the Keister of Gord basically is that butthole of the earth, and people like have loads of different names for it and stuff like this. There's this area called Glohio, I believe it's called, and it's a lot of UFOs live there, and it's like probably irradiated. But whenever you visit there for like a certain amount of time, you'll come out glowing. And all the places on the Oath have like really sort of bizarre names, because they are just named in like a really kind of strange way, because the people don't have like a kind of frame of reference. It's not like a really massively evolved language. So it's like there's one place called the Festerance. There's a place called that one place with all the sand. Some huge ass mountain range. Baba Joanna, unpassable stones. Greece, the Great Sludge Lake. Klorb's Wang. You can see why I like this.
So it's like people that aren't really smart, really, that populate this world, and that's why they name stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that's also why.
Or are they smart?
I think there are people that are smart on the world, right? And they're called. They actually have like a specific name. So playing one of those smart people, actually kind of like is a big deal. So you'll be called a Wisenheimer. So Wisenheimers are like, they also get bullied a lot because you're like a nerd, you know? And so they're rare, but they are about, you know? And there's a lot of places. For example, there's a big island called Agog, which I'm fairly certain is England. And it's all tribal there. And there are a lot of places like that, the tribal. I mean, if you think of some of the races, like there's the Hawks, the Kremphilians, and things like this. And a lot of those people are just, you know, they're tough guys, you know? And some of the places like that, you're not going to survive. If you're a Wisenheimer and you don't have backup, you're a dead man. Or a dead thing. So yeah,
all right. So we covered religion, we covered the character races, arcane backgrounds, archetypes. You talked a little bit about the world, but how do you put all that together? So you want to start a campaign. What do you do in this world? Is there some type of meta plot, or you can just go, it's just adventuring, exploring? What is it?
This is one of the things that I actually struggled with the most when I was reading the book, because they've got an adventure generator in the back here. They've got a relatively short adventure, and I found this makes it seem bad, because before I say this, I just want to say that one of the joys I found about reading this book was I found the world to be very detailed. Every single character bio was, or race bio I should say, was very detailed in really fun to read. Really reminded me of like Terry Pratchett, incredibly fun to read. But one of the one of the things it does is that it constantly drops in the names of people from throughout the world, and it kind of it gets a bit confusing for someone of low intelligence like me. And I'll just go, it'll be like, okay, so it'll just drop in like, hey, this guy Gablongadus the Third, and he was the secretary to Jablingalus the Flonglide, and you're like, okay, cool. And so there's an adventure at the back, and I did read it. I read the whole thing, but it was like, it was very hard to keep track of because it had so many weird names going throughout the whole thing. And as far as I know, what happens is that the characters are like at a bar, right? And then this dude runs in, snatches this bloke's ear off. As far as I can recall, I was reading it in a doctor's office, this bit, and he snatches this bloke's ear off, and then the guy asks you to go and retrieve the ear, and then there's twists and turns and things like this. So the thing about this world is it's populated with so many different types of thing. The adventures could be anything. It could be anything to treasure hunting, to being a gangster, to like trying to build up a slave trade within the universe, to dungeon delving, to pretty much anything. So when I was trying to sort of come up with like adventure archetypes, what is the archetypical adventure in LowLife? I honestly drew a blank, because the world is so dense and rich. I was just like, what do you do in LowLife? And I honestly don't know, because the book is centered all around this guy who's a gadabout, right? Who goes around trying to document what the world is all about. And the adventure is it's quite typical in a way. It's, hey, this guy's taken something from me, can you get it back? And like, I imagine that would be really fun for a one shot, especially because you're playing these weirdos and strange creatures and things like this. But I'm not entirely sure.
The motivation, that, like, how can you get motivated about going after someone's ears? Like,
well, the
who
thing
cares?
is, he could offer you clams, which is the currency in the world, and that's fine. Or you could be personally invested. Maybe he's a mate of yours, whatever. You could alter the beginning of the adventure. It doesn't matter. It could be anything.
Right.
But my point is that it's one of those worlds, a little bit like D&D almost, where
Kitchen sink.
Sink, yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's honestly a good point. I think he's done himself a bloody good job there, because it's good. But for example, when I recommend a setting like 50 Fathoms, you know what you're going to be doing in that. When I recommend a setting like Solomon Kane, you know you're going to be monster hunting. In this, what do I say you're going to be doing in this? And the answer is, I don't know, unless it's the type of campaign that I'm going to be running, and it can be anything, which is a good thing, because you could be playing this for years and years. The only thing is that I don't think there's an archetypical adventure for LowLife, really.
Well, that's fair. I mean, for some people, they prefer the kitchen sink and coming up with their own campaigns for it. And yeah, other people like to know what the setting is about, really, and what you do in there. Like you said, 50 Fathoms, you're probably going to be a pirate or a privateer, and you're going to be, sailing the seas and smuggling and that type of thing. But this one, it's basically up to the GM, really, to craft their own campaigns. And I think for someone like you that usually doesn't run plot point campaigns, that's perfect, because you just come up with whatever you want. You might latch on to a particular element of the world of the gazetteer or a character, an NPC, and then build a whole campaign around that.
Yeah, for me, one of the things I latched onto while I was reading it seemed to be because of the name, and also because it seemed to be like there was a big theme in the book of there was like big characters sort of pissing on the lowly, right? And it seemed to me like one of the things I wanted to kind of have as a plot was, and it's not even like that big a plot, because people do this in any RPG, was maybe either revenge on like a big guy that's screwed them over, like a big gangster, or like a big tribes leader or something like this, and having maybe a revenge plot. I think that would work really well in this, or maybe working their way up in a gang or something like this. I think that would work really well in this, because I think that I didn't know that crime was such a big deal in this, and religion as well. Maybe because religion is such a big deal, maybe having a sort of war between two of these really whacked out crazy religions would be really, really fun, and having a big war plot, that would be awesome. So yeah, I don't know how I would do a campaign in this, but yeah, it's crazy.
You'll figure it out.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about what is it you want to talk about next? Bestiary, maybe?
Yeah, the Bestiary, because this is insane. This is insane. Let's talk about a Bestiary, because these things, what I like about this is it has a big thing of different wild cards and extras. So you've got like, they're just insane, all of them. So you've got Brocodile. I think we all know what that is. God, some of these names, man. Badunkadunk. To look at it, it's hard to even describe most of these, Eric, but this looks like a giant heart with boils on it, wielding a staff. That's Badunkadunk. So a lot of this is like, it's got the main characters and the extras sort of lumped into one, and some of these are absolutely giant. So there's a thing called a cheese leech, and it's got like a regular character sitting on its head, and it just looks like a gigantic leech, like with a sort of almost cute face sitting on some cheese, and it's like city-sized, this beach. There's a behemoth, and of course there's a thing called a canker, a dweeb, the giggities as well. Obviously those are the things that the giggity giggers capture. Gruz, harebear, milf. Some of the things that he's gotten away with in this is just insane. But yeah, they're all crazy. There's one called a scary ass mother, and it's just given the middle finger, and it's just like a big scary face with legs and arms. There's another one called the unpronounceable thing. Yeah, they're all insane. And what's cool about this is that they've all got this kind of like grotesque artwork, and they really make it look like they're scary. And all you need to do is just, one of these could be an adventure on their own, especially the wildcard ones. But you could make one of them a wildcard, like the cheese leech. That's an adventure in its own. Like, let's say, for example, there's a town somewhere.
Give him a name.
Yeah. And it's just like, this guy's, his cheese is being nicked, and he in massive volumes. And then suddenly, you see this thing rolling into town. That's an adventure. Can you take that down? How the hell are you going to do that? Cheese leech. So yeah, the monsters are amazing, and all accompanied by the artwork. And one thing I didn't mention, obviously, is the presentation, because that makes a lot of this book, because often most of the things in this, including the world, which is accompanied by an amazing world map, a lot of these things, the descriptions, they're amazing. They're obviously accompanied by some incredible writing and hilarious writing, but they require artwork, because they're very difficult to imagine, And luckily, Andy Hopp is an artist, and he does some incredible and pretty grotesque, like disgusting artwork to go with it. And you're just like, yeah, okay, I get this now. I get this. Pretty disgusting stuff.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to mention, because, well, it's rather unique to Andy, because he's in a position where, well, obviously he's an incredible writer. He's written, stuff that won prizes and stuff, but he's also an incredible artist, and he's able to do both and make everything come alive. Because usually when you write a product, you'll write your RPG book, and then you'll turn to an artist and you'll try to explain what you want that artist to draw, and sometimes they hit the nail on the head, and sometimes they're a bit off, and you're left with something that doesn't quite work. But with LowLife, I mean, you get the best of the two, because what he imagined, he can actually draw it as well, which is incredible, I think.
Yeah, so it's always like spot on to what the words are saying. What is pictured right there is just it, and it always looks incredible, every single bit. I mean, even down to the fact that there's a self-portrait of himself at the end, done in the style of LowLife, and it looks pretty gross. But
yikes.
Yeah, there's this. There's also one thing right at the end as well. There's LARP rules. LARP rules, Eric. You ever want to play LowLife LARP with me?
I'm not sure. Well, maybe with you, not with Gary, for sure.
Oh, mate, Gary would do some stuff. But yeah, they're kind of cool. There's one section I didn't quite get about how initiative worked, because it just kind of says with initiative you don't use cards. Then everyone goes in initiative order, and I was like, so how do you determine initiative order? Other than that, it actually seems like quite a robust system, how it works. So I quite like that. I've played Savage Worlds LARP before, and it required a GM to sort of go around and do dice rolls for everybody. So what I really liked was in this, it actually provides rules for playing a LARP without having to have a GM kind of thing. What you'd have to still have a facilitator, but you wouldn't have to have them come around, roll dice and stuff, which is kind of cool. In addition to that, the name of the LARPing system in here is pretty cool, because they call it Playing Dirty. Oh yeah. So last of all, I just wanted to mention the support for this, because this game is obviously very well supported. They did have minis available on the website, but you had a look at that the other day and couldn't find them. Well, they were not for sale anymore. They might be out of stock.
Yeah, or maybe they're on another site. I'm not sure, but there were some minis made for this at some point, and they look incredible.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. But what I managed to pick up, well, thankfully, you gave me the religion book. So there's a book all about religions. It's got detailed sections on all new religions, like loads, absolutely loads. If that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, well, first of all, it's got a wicked name. It's called the Great Sect Change Operation. Second of all, the cool thing, what he does is that he puts in extra content just in case you're like, okay, a whole book about religions. Well, I don't plan on making sure this like putting a lot of religious based stuff in my campaign. Well, don't worry about it, because you've got new races in here. You got the Blorb, the Coblin, the Dork, the Dunks, the Heron, and the Marshmallow. So the Coblin was the corn and the cob person that I mentioned earlier. You got the Marshmallow people called the Marshmallows, and a bunch of others. So that's pretty cool. New hindrances and edges, powers, loads of stuff. So it's pretty cool, and new creeps as well, which is like bad guys. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. And another one is the Gadabout's Guide to Keister Island. So I mentioned earlier that, you know, the butthole of the earth. Well, that's actually on an island, and so if you wanted to have a really like densely made island with a lot of stuff on it, and just wanted to set it in one place in this world, well, there's a book. The first supplement was called The Whole Hole, A Gadabout's Guide to Mother Earth Keister Island. Now, this details one specific part of that world and everything in it, and it's really cool. And one of the things I liked about what he did in it is that he included these symbols. So they detail, each one has like, it'll be like price, quality, information, danger, grub, grog, places to sleep, things like this, right? So every time you see a place mentioned, it will give these symbols. So if you see like 4 clam symbols, you know that there's going to be a lot of money, because clams is the currency, right? If you see a lot of quality symbols, you know that this is a nice place, and so on. So it's kind of like almost like TripAdvisor.
Oh, okay. So instead of having to read the whole description of a place, just by going by these symbols, you can tell what you can expect from that place.
Exactly. So let's say if your players go somewhere you're not expecting during a session, you can just go, oh shit, and then you just quickly turn to that place, look at the symbols, and go, all right, good. I think I can get it just for now to get me through this session. Yeah, and in addition to like a really, really detailed description, plus a map of all that island, and the history of it as well, which is awesome. It's also got 3 new races: the fungi, the flu, and the snell. So it's a snail, fungus, and another thing which I can't bloody remember right now. And then it's got new hindrances and edges, and a new setting rules for this island, and a bunch of stuff. So it's got new equipment as well, which is pretty amazing, and new bestiary for this place, which is really, really cool. So it's not like it's just the setting book. Well, it kind of is, but it's got like enough in there to warrant the purchase of this book, even if you're like, well, I'm not just going to set my game in that one place, or I'm not going to spend enough time in that one place. You could buy this and just be like, cool, I got all these new monsters, new races, new this, new that, and just be like, good, done, got all that stuff, put it in my other game.
Nice.
Yeah, and the last couple of things I wanted to talk about with the support is it's got its own adventure deck called the Misadventure deck, and this is fantastic because obviously it's got stuff like specific to LowLife. And I picked up 2 more things called the Heap of Creeps and the Heap of Peeps. So the Heap of Peeps, this is a whole deck of like kind of oversized postcard-sized cards. And these are NPCs or player characters that you can use with stands, so you can stack them on the table and stand them up. And then the Creeps is obviously NPCs and enemies, basically. Now, these are really awesome, but the peeps, I as Eric kind of pointed out to me, and I kind of had a look at them, they're not necessarily that balanced to use as player characters, but as NPCs, like 100% go ahead.
I mean, we've used them when I played a game before where we used the heap of peeps as player characters for a con game, for a one shot. I think it could work, but for a campaign, I'm not sure. Unless people don't have a problem with having unbalanced characters.
I think though with these characters, they're cool, and yeah, like a con game. But if I was playing a campaign, I'd have people make their own characters anyway. And the pretty much every race is represented here. I got the clump number 2, so I wanted to buy the lot, but I couldn't afford it. But the cool thing about this is that yeah, pretty much every race is represented here, and they're just insane. Like the names. Let me just, so you got Kozabakoon Peas, Gronkadonk, Junkwaddle Smudge, Minty Fresh Breath. Well, that's actually a good name. The Sockstrosity. So that's just a sock, mate. Pandalope the Panderer. Yeah, awesome. And they've got the artwork on them. What I like about it is what you could do if you're playing with minis as well, is stick one of these down on the table, put it in the stand and say, okay, you're fighting 3 of these, then put the minis down on the table and you've got the artwork there. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And it even comes with a reference card showing you what each race is as well, which is really cool. So yeah, that's pretty much all the supporting stuff. There's other stuff as well, like figure flats and stuff, but I didn't get those because they're like $12 a pack, and there's like 12 packs. So I was like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get all of those. Never mind. But yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, because this new edition, I think it's called Redredged.
Yeah, Redregged.
Right, LowLife
or Redregged.
Redregged. Yeah, whatever. But there used to be another book, I think it was just called LowLife, but that new one is, well, first off, every illustration is in color, but it's organized differently than what you'd expect from a Savage Worlds book. So can you talk about that a little bit?
It's a little bit strange. So the way it works is that every single piece of information is put in the book first, then all the rules. And it's kind of weird. So to give you an example, it'll be like, there's a whole section on all the races in the book, but the way it does it is it only gives you like the background on the race, the history, who they like, who they don't like, and how they fight, right? And it'll be just information, and it's like a big paragraph, really interesting, really, really nice. But then it doesn't really give you like the stats, how you play them, how to create that character, anything like that. Then later on, right at the back of the book, like in sort of like the last, I don't know, 30% of the book, then it goes rules, how to create a character. And so it's only once you've read all the other stuff that you can then go and use that information to create your own one. Does that make sense? And so it's like, so for example, then you've got like the section describing what an UFO is. Then you go at the back, and then it will say, when you want to create an UFO, take these 3 edges at character creation. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah, I get that. But the thing is, let's say for example you were playing this with players, and you just sat the book down on the table, and they just went to the character creation bit. It would be nice to have like that description alongside the character creation, you know, if they wanted to sit and read it. Not the players read ever, but you know what I mean.
Right.
It's not organised like a normal Savage Worlds book. It's organised in a very different way. It's almost like the GM section comes first, then the player section. You know what I mean? But it's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, because I read it a little bit and I have the book, but I think what they were trying to do is to make it that you could use this book to run LowLife in whatever system you like. So if you don't like Savage Worlds, but you want to run a LowLife campaign in, I don't know, Pathfinder or Fate or whatever, you can still use all the fluff, the information at the front of the book, or even like you mentioned, the playing dirty.
Yeah.
you can do that as well. But if you want to play Savage Worlds, then all the rules are at the end. But I think what you're saying now is that this makes it difficult to actually run a Savage Worlds game or create characters anyway. Is that what you're trying to say?
To an extent, yeah. I think what I might do if I ran this was print out some of the pages and lay them on the table for when people were creating characters. You know what I mean? And then just do that and staple some relevant pages together. It's not terrible. It's just that I found that a little bit strange. Like I'd prefer to have it all statted in one. And the thing is, it'll be ludicrous to release like a system neutral version and this one, because very few people will even get the chance to release one book, let alone two. So, but I'm just saying, like, I just found it a bit strange. And then there's even a section where it describes every single arcane background. Then it describes later on how to use them in Savage Worlds. And I get what you mean. I think you're right when, like, it seems like they wanted to have it as a system agnostic book, then the Savage Worlds book, then the LARPing rules. It's like, I get it. I don't really mind it that much, but it was just very strange to me. Like, I don't know. I didn't mind it too much, but I was just like, man, it just seemed weird to me, because I think it might make it harder during character creation, and that sort of stuff I don't particularly like. But I don't think it's going to put me off playing the game, because the game is too fun for me, or at least it seems fun. One other thing that is like kind of different in this. Oh, there we go. Upstairs are drilling. Hopefully we won't be able to hear that. I'm going to get closer to the mic. So, one other thing that was kind of different in this is that you now have hindrances that are, what are they called? They're called something like really, really massive. Can you hear the drilling really bad?
Yes.
All right, let's wait for them to stop. So yeah, one thing I wanted to mention as well is that there's a new type of hindrance in this. So previously you have minor, major, and now you got really big ones, and they're called doozies. So you can actually claw back during character creation. Instead of, like, you usually get 1 point, 2 point, now you get 4 points if you pick a doozy. So yeah, it's like these are like bigger hindrances that can give you back like some more, basically. And to give you some examples of a doozy, right? I'm going to give you some. I hope you're ready, Eric, because it's not like I'm stalling for time. Because, like, here's an example. Here's an example right now. Are you ready, Eric? Eric, are you ready?
Yep.
Well, yeah, because so am I. Go. So I just hope you're ready, because obviously I am as well.
Let's do this.
Because, for example, sightless, blind, that's a doozy. I know they've already got that in normal Savage Worlds, but that's a doozy. So if you have no sight, that's a doozy. Limbless, that's a doozy. Could be a nugget. Sorry, that's offensive. I'll bleep that. Those are the only two. Right, done. Oh no, the drilling's starting up again, Eric.
It's all good. We're almost done here, so
anyway,
I think we covered quite a bit.
That's basically LowLife. I think it looks amazing. The one thing that I find that I really, really like about this is the comedy. I just think, although I have a reputation for only doing comedic games and things like this, one of the things that I often like to have in my long campaign games is like moments where we get serious. We have, character moments, things like, oh, for f***'s sake. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, I think they've stopped. Right, so, one is like moments where characters get deep, get personal, things like this, and we have actually, even if we're playing a comedy campaign like we did with our Batman one, it's like people like to have, we like to have moments where it actually gets serious, and I hope that if I played this as a campaign with my group, that they would take a minute and hopefully get serious. But if they're playing like a Twinkie who smokes, oh my god.
Okay, here's something I thought about not long ago about comedy in RPGs and all that, and tell me if this makes sense. It's like a theory I've got. So when you play a really serious game, a game that takes itself seriously, the first thing that players will do is crack a joke at every opportunity. Every time it gets tense, you'll have someone crack a joke. If it gets scary, they'll crack a joke, and then it's comedy, and then you sort of lose the tone of the game that you want to run. But when you run a campaign that doesn't take itself seriously, when there's comedy in it, just like, well, I'm plugging again Wise Guys, where there has to be some comedy in there because it's silly a little bit and funny. People will actually react differently. Instead of wanting to make more jokes, they'll actually make it more serious and drama heavy with the role play. Have you had that experience?
I don't know if you can hear this, Eric, but as great a question as that was, the works upstairs, they're going mental. I think this is going to have to be where we end the podcast. Oh no, there we go, they've stopped. Oh no, they haven't stopped. Oh god. Right, well anyway, there it goes. No, I mean, funnily enough, we're playing Gen Lab Alpha at the moment, where everyone plays mutated animals, and we've never been more serious. Oh, there they go. Right, see you later, everyone. That's LowLife.
All right, enjoy LowLife, people.
Overall, I give it 10 out of 10.
Drilling.
See you later, everyone.
The Wild Die podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die podcast.